You want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered. And this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't gonna be that fun.
All right, good morning, everybody. And welcome to the Doug Collins podcast. It is Friday's finest. It's Friday, July 26th. I'm Chip Lake. I'm guest hosting today, and James is going to join us here in just a second. We got a lot to go over. It seems like 2 or 3 weeks ago when Joe Biden made his announcement via Twitter, X, the platform now known as X, that was formerly known as Twitter, that he's stepping out of the race. And while it seems like it was a long time ago, it was really on Sunday of last week. So it's been 5 days. So we're going to talk about that and Kamala Harris and the changes, the dynamic changes in the presidential election. Even though we don't do a lot of politics on Friday's Finest, but we have to talk about this. We have to talk about this. So we're going to get started. We're going to talk a little bit of JD Vance. We're going to talk about options that are available and names that are being floated for Kamala Harris's VP pick. The Olympics opening ceremonies are only hours away in Paris. And really different opening ceremonies this year. So looking forward to seeing what that looks like. I believe it's going to be time delayed a little bit. It'll happen live here in just a couple hours. And then NBC will carry it tape delayed this afternoon. And then we'll finish up. We'll talk a little bit of football since we're NFL training camp is open. We already have a couple notable holdouts, and then strange things going on with the Star in Dallas. So we'll talk about that. So stick with us after the break, and we'll get started.
We are experiencing instability at every level. Our government lacks leadership, and Bidenomics has been a disaster. The economy is in a fragile state. Inflation has been a consistent issue. High interest rates have put significant pressure on the real estate market, and there have been major bank failures. And many analysts say a stock market correction is likely overdue. We have global conflicts in Europe and the Middle East that have potential to spread, but gold has soared to record highs even among the tensions. There are so many reasons that Americans should consider investments in gold and silver, and Legacy Precious Metals is the gold standard. I love Legacy Precious Metals because of their zero-hassle, education-first approach. They can help you roll your traditional IRA into a gold IRA or ship metals directly to your house. That's what I do. So go to www.legacypminvestments.com to download their free gold investment guide. And look, I've read it. You need to read it. There's so much valuable information in there. So, friends, now's the time to not roll the dice with your hard-earned money. Find out about the growth potential that gold and precious metals can offer you. Contact Legacy Precious Metals today and tell them that Doug Collins sent you. You might have heard Mike Lindell and MyPillow no longer have the support of the box stores or the shopping channels the way they used to. They've been part of the cancel culture, so they want to pass the savings directly on to you by having a $25 extravaganza. When Mike started MyPillow, it was just one product company. With the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products. Some of you may not even know about that. So to get the word out, I want to invite my listeners to check out the $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-pillow use MyPillows are just $25. MyPillow sandals, $25. There's 6-pack of towel sets, $25. Brand new 4-pack dish towels. You guessed it, just $25. And for the first time ever, the MyPillows with all new Giza fabric, just $25. All orders over $75 will see free shipping too. This amazing offer won't last long, so go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Collins, that's COLLINS, or call 800-986-3994 today. That's promo code Collins. Hey, inflation's at a 40-year high. The stock market looks more uncertain than ever. The new central bank digital currency is on its way and could be the government's ultimate surveillance tool against Americans. It looks like the government is playing games with your savings and retirement. So what are you going to do to help protect yourself? Did you know that you can have physical gold and silver into your IRA or 401k with zero tax or penalties? Millions of Americans are doing this right now for protection, and you should think about it too. A company I trust and recommend is Preserve Gold. They will go all over your options and make sure the process of acquiring precious metals is simple and easy. So if you're looking to help protect your retirement with a trustworthy company, request your free investment guide from the experts at Preserve Gold. Preserve Gold is accredited by the Better Business Bureau, and they have hundreds of 5-star reviews, so you know that you're in good hands. Just text Collins, Collins, to 50505. As an exclusive offer for my listeners, they'll get up to $15,000 in free gold and silver with a qualifying purchase on a retirement account rollover. So don't wait. Text Collins to 50505 today and get your free gold and silver investment guide and take the first step. Again, text Collins to 50505 to get your free guide from the good people at Preserve Gold.
All right, folks, thanks for joining. Again, it's Friday, July 26th. James, as I mentioned before the break, in many ways, it seems like 3 or 4 weeks ago that Joe Biden made an announcement on X that he was stepping away as the nominee for the Democratic Party, and he was heeding the call of many in his party that had asked him to step aside. But that was only Sunday of last week. That was on the 21st of July. So this is the first Friday's Finest since we've been back. And needless to say, James, the presidential election has been turned on its head very quickly yet again, as if this election cycle hasn't had enough drama. Yet again, we have more this week.
Well, what's funny is if you go back, if you listen and watch the show, one of the titles of our show a couple weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, the day the race changed, which was the day after the assassination attempt of Donald Trump. And now we can title that again this same show because it changed again. We could be completely honest about this. When the assassination attempt happened and Trump stood up and put his hand up, and that image is going to be in textbooks, and I know everybody on the internet says that, but for generations, like that's what we're going to see. And I was like, that it's his to lose now because Biden had such a disastrous debate that everything after that was like all Trump has to do is sit back, and then that happens. It's like it's his to lose. And George Clooney was asking Biden to leave, and the other party members were asking Biden to leave. Schumer, literally everyone you can think of that was a prominent Democrat was kind of like, you should probably go. And he eventually made the decision, like you said, via X, to let everybody. He basically sent a text to everyone and was like, "Hey, I'm out." That's sort of how it felt.
And the irony of all of that is that Joe Biden announces he's no longer going to be the Democratic nominee on Elon Musk's platform. About a week after, because you remember Elon Musk formally endorsed Donald Trump right after the shooting.
Yeah.
Right after the assassination.
And don't forget that Biden said, "I'm going to quit. I will drop out if I get sick," and then got COVID the next day.
Yeah, and
it was
James,
a crazy.
Said, you have to when there's so much noise around you to get out. I mean, you have to be almost defiant in your will and your rhetoric in your words to stay in. And I think he said, if I remember correctly, it was unless the Lord Almighty comes down and tells me not to run. And then he flies to Vegas and gets COVID. And to me, that was, that did seem like a sign from up
some
above,
sort
right?
of divine intervention.
Look, dude, it's time. Okay. Because he announced he had COVID. It was like a day after or a day and a half after, I think, what was it? That Trump got shot in Pennsylvania. So you just can't make it up. And as if this race hasn't changed enough. Now all of a sudden, and you mentioned it in your comments, Yes, I mean, all of these races, any big race, whether it's a statewide race for governor, United States Senate, and even smaller races, but certainly this race for president, they all have peaks and valleys. All of them have peaks and valleys. And wow, has the Democratic Party and the Trump campaign both experienced kind of peaks and valleys. The Democratic Party didn't know where they were going to go, right? They didn't know if they would succeed. I mean, the writing was on the wall after the debate that Joe Biden, he wasn't all there. His mental decline, his cognitive decline was more advanced than we all thought, and we candidly,
and it was on display for all of us.
It was on display for the whole world to see, right? So you couldn't hide it, and it just also I think goes to show how scripted what these people do is, and how few times and how few opportunities there really are to get a sitting president of the United States in a position like that. It doesn't happen very often. So much of what they do and almost all of what Joe Biden did was scripted. But let's talk a little bit about how this race has changed. And I'll tell you something that surprised me a little bit. And in hindsight, maybe it shouldn't surprise me, but it did. I kind of feel like Colin Cowherd right now, where Colin was right, where Colin was wrong. Where I was right was I didn't think I thought I kind of quietly predicted 3 months ago that they would replace Joe Biden at the convention, and people were calling me crazy. And I said, guys, every day it's getting worse. It's getting worse. But where I was wrong was how quickly they coalesced around Kamala Harris.
You are not I don't know anyone else who has said Kamala was going to be picked immediately. I've only heard people talk about it.
It wasn't really even a serious discussion. It was, it was something that happened with lightning speed. And it was, nobody even dipped their toe in the water except Joe Manchin from West Virginia. And you really can't call what Manchin did dipping your toe in the water. Manchin just said, hey, I'm going to look at, maybe switching back to a Democrat and trying this. And that lasted all of maybe 7.5 hours. And I think he dipped his toe in the water in prime time. And then by the morning, he had taken his toe out of the water. And so, look, again, it's the 26th of July. This announcement happened from Joe Biden on the 21st. And, the polls show that things have closed. It's a honeymoon period for Kamala Harris. I'm not all that surprised. I still think she was a very underwhelming vice president of the United States. We know she was an underwhelming candidate for president when she ran. She never even made it to Iowa. But I'll tell you this, James, and I told Doug the same thing when he and I spoke earlier in the week, and I know he's not able to join us today. But in my lifetime, and I'm 52 years old, I feel like I'm a lot older than that. But in my lifetime, I don't know that I've ever really believed, and I don't know that there's really ever that I've seen any data that shows that who a nominee picks for vice president has a measurable impact on what happens in November, right? It's usually, the vice president picks are normally what we call compliments, kind of complement the candidacy in one way, either with a certain voter group that the nominee is having trouble with, maybe geographically, something like that. I've never really believed that matters. Forget about all the buzz around Sarah Palin and J.D. Vance and Geraldine Ferraro and all this. None of that really matters. I think this time with Kamala Harris, it's different. And hear me out. Kamala Harris is the first nominee of a major party that didn't get a single vote in the primary season because she wasn't a candidate. Obviously, she was the sitting vice president, and Joe Biden was the candidate. And so, she's able to be in this position. Here we are, mid to late summer, and all of a sudden she wakes up and she's the nominee of the Democratic Party. And, the first polls that come out this week have her in a statistical dead heat, certainly within the margin of error everywhere. And I just think the reason I think it's important is because Kamala Harris, as a natural, is much more liberal than Joe Biden. Like Joe Biden,
100%.
Donald Trump called him a fake liberal. And what we mean by that is Joe Biden's evolved over his lifetime, right? I mean,
his past would scare people on the left if they really read it, for sure.
That's exactly right. Kamala Harris would not, other than her time as a prosecutor before she became an elected official, and so.
Sorry, real quick. I've been seeing it. Obviously, the internet is a horrible place to get information. However, I have been seeing a couple things where they were talking about they called her a hypocrite because she put thousands of black people behind bars, is how they put it. And then somebody decided to actually do their fact checking. And again, I don't know how true it is, but apparently she arrested, or she tried 1,000, like 1,100 African Americans, and only jailed like 11. And it was like something that got out of hand. And this is how this always goes. I'm sure there's information about Biden that way and Trump that way, but like that's the stuff where like we have to make sure that fact is checked. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
But outside of that, like, and we talked about this, I don't know what skeletons are in her closet. And I think that might be a reason why she was nominated so quickly.
Yeah, and every fiber in the Democratic Party's being right now really revolves around two issues. And I'm glad you brought that, up with regards to skeletons in the closet, because I don't know any either, I don't see any real big personal skeletons. Doesn't look like, there's any business skeletons of any,
and Trump stuff is already out there, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. She's a United States senator before she was vice president. And so, yeah, all of that's going to be, picked through. But everything in the Democratic Party's DNA right now revolves around two issues: woman's right to choose, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And here's what I have struggled to kind of figure out over the past 4 days, because it's very clear. And I say it's very clear because Joe Biden essentially said so when he picked her. I mean, Joe Biden essentially said one of the reasons that he chose her to be VP is because she was an African American female. And when your boss says that, he's the boss, he's the president, she's vice president. Even today, he's president, she's vice president, even though she's the nominee. It is what it is, right? And so first of all, I don't think it really helps us a lot on the Republican side to necessarily talk about DEI, but we're on a podcast and we can talk about it. I don't understand why the Democrats aren't celebrating this as a DEI pick. And hear me out, because in this case, for them, DEI worked. Joe Biden said, I am going to make an historic pick for vice president. I'm going to pick an African-American woman. And then situations happen. I mean, the vice president always has to be ready to become president at any time for any administration. And so now, while she's not president, she did get to become nominee of her party because she was the vice president when the president came to the realization that he wasn't in a position to serve for 4 more years. So I'm a little confused as to why they're not celebrating this, as to why DEI works, because it certainly looks like it's worked in this scenario the way it should work if you're a Democrat.
Yes. I will give you one reason. Maybe I can give you more than one, but I think the main reason they wouldn't celebrate it is because you don't want to talk about DEI as the reason someone was hired, right? Like, actually saying that means that they weren't picked because of their qualifications. When it comes
we
down
love
to
DEI, except if somebody accuses somebody
right
or if not accuses is a very strong word. If somebody, let me say, points out, how about that?
Well, yeah. So this is, and this goes to the NFL, and I know you know what I'm going to talk about, but the Rooney Rules, right? Where you have to interview a minority, right? And somehow people have moved around that, which is infuriating. But I am someone who I I get that. I understand DEI. I know a lot of people don't agree with it. I understand it completely because in my head, I'm like, for this many years, these people were left out of the conversation because of their color of their skin or whatever the whatever it was. They were left out because of that. So we had to figure out a way to make that happen, and so to get them interviews and to get people who were minorities a chance, right? And then it's come full circle to the point where it feels like everyone is getting hired for the most part. Again, I don't know the numbers, so I'm not going to pretend I do. And then when something happens, like unfortunately with the Trump assassination attempt, there was a lot of DEI talk and talking about how women couldn't do that job, and it was really annoying. That woman happened to be bad at her job. It was a bad image and it looked bad. Okay. In this case, if you mention that Kamala Harris is the president of the United States specifically because of DEI, then everything you've talked about other than that is completely thrown out the window. And I think that's the reason they're not bringing it up. So I'm with you.
I agree with you. I think
But
you're
yes,
exactly
it should
right.
be celebrated, but it's not for that very reason.
No, but that's the irony in this whole thing is that she was clearly a DEI pick. So much so that at the time Biden said so. But now it's like, no, she wasn't DEI. She's very quiet. And let me rewind too. You can be qualified and still be a DEI pick. Because
yes,
I think
absolutely.
that's where the disconnect in this discussion happens because, she was a DEI pick. I don't like Kamala Harris. I don't agree with her policies. I think she would be a horrible president. But I think she's qualified to be president. I think she's qualified because she meets all the requirements, right? She was she's a United States citizen. She's 35 years old. She got a law degree. She was Attorney General of California. She was a United States Senator from California. And for the last, the last 3 years, she's been Vice President of the United States.
She's got the
so
resume.
I think she's qualified.
Absolutely.
She's qualified. But, and I think that's the disconnect. It's just been fun to kind of watch it.
It's very funny. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Another thing that's been really fun to watch, James, is and then we'll kind of pivot after this a little bit. Yeah. And we'll talk about having sex with couches. But anytime Joe Biden did not want to tackle a tough issue, he would put the vice president in control of the issue and it would go away. And immigration in the situation at the border has been a disaster for this administration, an absolute disaster. The border what's going on at the border is a crisis. The American people know it's a crisis and they know who to blame for it. So early on in the administration, Joe Biden said, I'm going to put Kamala Harris in charge of immigration, in charge of looking into the system, the root causes of immigration. And, she's going to get to the bottom of what we can do at the border. And so the press reported at the time that she was the border czar. And the American people believed that she was the border czar. But now all of a sudden, over the last 4 days, she's not the border czar. She was appointed to look into the root causes of immigration.
She's just the vice president.
The root causes of immigration are spilling over on our southern border. And it's just been fascinating to watch the mainstream media come to the defense. In fact, Peter Doocy at Fox News last night or yesterday asked Karine Jean-Pierre at the dais about talking points that he handed up and said that, that Democrats on the Hill were given, that talk about how that we always need to correct anybody when they say she was appointed border czar. She wasn't appointed border czar, and it just goes. She was appointed border czar. And they might not have put the word czar in their press release when they announced it, but she was appointed border czar. And at the end of the day, to me, it goes to show that the Democrats know exactly what a big issue they have with this border. But it also goes to show the problem that Donald Trump and his campaign are going to have over the next 102 days, whatever it is, until November, because, you had a mainstream press who was accused of being complicit in the cognitive decline of Joe Biden. They were really critical of him the last 3 or 4 weeks. And all that criticism is gone beyond the wayside. And now we're back into what we are normally in, which is the mainstream media covering for the Democratic nominee for president. And I think it's going to be a problem for the Trump campaign, and they know it. And I think they're just trying to figure out how to best navigate it.
Well, we talked about this right before we went on, but Trump basically had like a 3-lap lead. He was just kind of rolling through. And, we talk about how the media has made some, and I think there's so many biased networks out there. It's very annoying to me to watch. And I don't really know if there is one that isn't totally biased, but I do love that the entire country bullied a man into quitting. And, they knew they had to bully him. Otherwise, there would be no shot, and they would have Donald Trump as their president. And there were a lot of people who didn't want that. That's just a fact. Obviously, 50% of the country essentially doesn't want that. That's been made very clear. And they said, if we don't get him out of here, there is no world where we have a chance at winning. It's not even up for debate. The guy can't speak. And at this point, it's just, it is really hard to watch.
Very hard.
If you're like a liberal or a Democrat and like that's your life, and you're watching the guy that you picked a couple years ago, about 4 years ago, to be your president, is incapable of speaking on television, you have to remove him, because that's half the job. One half of the job is making decisions. The other half is going on TV and telling people those decisions. And they had to pick someone who was capable of it. And they said, well, we have to, and they spent, and you're not wrong, they spent 3 weeks or however long ago the debate was, just going on television and bullying him into quitting. And he eventually did. And they had to get celebrities involved and his other, basically all his Democratic friends, like basically his friends had to come to his house and have an intervention and be like, dude, what are you doing?
It's like taking the keys away from your parents when they're too old to drive their car.
It's exactly what it is. Chip, that is the best example, because sometimes I'm going through this with my mother. We went to Italy. It was a nightmare. But it's funny because my mom, but here's where I have the sympathy for Joe Biden. My mother gets car sick if she's not driving. Right? And so when we drive, she's in the back panicking. Like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. I'm like, close your eyes, go to sleep, do something, right? They basically, like you said, took the keys away from Joe Biden. But Joe Biden's, the rest of the part of his brain that's functioning is like, I can do this. What are you guys talking about? Give me my keys back. And also, I don't want any of you driving my car. That's how he felt. Right. And listen, if you're the president, listen, regardless how you feel, if you're a president, your ego is at a different, no president has no ego. That's an impossible. To even attempt the arrogance to think you could be the president of the United States means you have an ego, right? I mean, let's be honest. So
it does.
So you're telling him, you're like, hey, I'm going to need those keys and your Ferrari that you almost totaled last week. I'm going to need that, because if you do total it, everybody's going to be pissed off. And that's what they did. They took it from him. If you're Trump though, and you saw how quickly they picked Kamala, you are terrified. The only reason you're terrified is they poured in $81 million in 24 hours. They weren't getting any money.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's why the choice became so quick, is that because before she even fully became the nominee, $50 million showed up on her front door. And they were
Yeah,
like, we don't
man.
have a
I mean,
choice.
it is.
That's who's and let me ask
Yeah.
you a question, because I'm curious, and then we can move on from this. But
Yeah.
if you're Trump, are you afraid that a lot of people are going to vote because of the history they may make in voting
Yeah,
for
I mean,
an
certainly
African
that has to
American
be
woman?
part of the equation. That
Because it
certainly
makes
has to be
sense to me.
part of the equation that they're dealing with, right? Because they thought at a very minimum, James, that what was going to happen was um, I think they knew in the back of their heads there was a pretty good chance that Joe Biden would step aside. But I think they thought that during the Olympics, because that's the time frame we have. That's why the Democratic National Convention is not going to be until late August, because of the Olympic Games. I think they thought during the Olympics they would continue to fight over who their nominee would be. And so, yeah, I mean, you have to focus group that. You have to look into that. Yeah, I mean, that's all. That's all part of the equation. And then, my biggest concern as a Republican, as somebody who doesn't want Kamala Harris to be president, is, I didn't think, and it's only been 4 days, so the body of work that we have to make this evaluation is very tiny. It's very small. But I didn't know that Kamala Harris, and I still really don't know, is capable of being serious. And I mean, that's a very simple thing, right? I mean, it's, there's so many, clips out there of her giggling and cackling and just talking more in word salads that it's like, what? But, when she was with Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, she looked presidential. And those are the type of situations in photo ops that that Biden and the Harris team are going to want more of, that Trump and his team aren't going to want to see as much of. And, look, it doesn't matter what she does. I'm not voting for her. I'm voting for Donald Trump.
Right.
I've had enough of the policies of this administration. I think they're taking America backwards. I think that's, ultimately the best argument that Donald Trump has. And I think he's really succeeded with it, but got to stay on message with it. We can't, we don't really want to go down with, I mean, the reason to beat Kamala Harris is not because she was a DEI pick for vice president. It's because she was the most liberal senator in the United States Senate. Now, Kamala Harris could come out and say, well, I represented the state of California in the United States Senate. It's one of the most liberal, progressive states. And she's right, but, a lot of times, and this is kind of my concern too, but, a lot of times, in primary, when you're messaging to primary electorates, you're messaging to the base. When you're messaging to general election electorates, it's a far broader and bigger audience, and it expands beyond the base. And so she got to be the nominee without having to go through the primary process,
which pisses a lot of people off, understandably.
Yeah. I mean, it is, but it is what it is, right? So we're just stuck with it. But talking about how the media is complicit, I think, is going to be even more complicit. Did you see the story about J.D. Vance and sex on a couch?
Sex with a couch.
With the couch. No, sorry, not on a couch. Not on a couch. I mean, who among us is not guilty?
I'm just going to read this real quick. I'm going to read you the two articles that I have. This is at 8:07 a.m. yesterday. AP declares that, quote, J.D. Vance did not have sex with a couch in a fact check. A little late. Now that was on Huffington. It was either the Huff Post or Huffington Post. A little bit later, at around 11:53 a.m., AP walks back fact check on fake J.D. Vance couch sex story. Now, let's take a moment, guys. Let's take a real moment about this. First of all, that's hilarious, because the fact that it's even a rumor is, listen, everyone says there's some truth to all rumors. Who caught J.D. Vance trying to have sex with a couch, and who told somebody? That's the real question. Like, who walked in and was like, is that J.D.? Is that my couch?
And the fact
what's going on?
Yeah, yes. I thought they needed to fact check it.
The Associated Press has made some real decisions. over the last few
Yeah.
years where you're like, why are you a part of this? Why don't you just go away for a minute?
Yeah.
They need to reevaluate. The media is listen, the media is very funny. It's out of control. Things get crazy. But just even the thought that you had to fact check whether or not JD Vance had sex with a couch should tell you everything you need to know about him.
Yeah.
It just made me laugh.
110%. Let's pivot to issues that are far more important
Yes.
than the presidential election, and that is training camp has begun.
Absolutely.
NFL
Screw the
training
election.
camp has begun. Screw the election. That's right. NFL, more important things. I saw a meme this week that said it was a meme in the South with, and the top of it was, everything burning, and then the bottom it said people in the South are like, that's great. When does college football start? It's kind of the situation that we're in, right? I mean, kids are I think this week they started college practice. High schools have been going at it for a couple of weeks. I know, at least in Georgia, I mean, the first high school football game is, I think, around the 10th of August. Quick, man.
Oof.
I mean, that's hot football.
It's coming, baby.
Let's talk about the NFL because that's where a lot of the storylines are coming out the first week. Couple big notable holdouts to start the
massive.
Our Brandon Ayuk in San Francisco he's a hold in, not really
a hold in,
out.
which
He's a hold in. He's shown up at training camp, but then CeeDee Lamb and all the drama around Dallas. I mean, what do you think's going on with the star in Arlington?
Well, as a former Dallasite for 2 years, I can tell you that people are going to react very rationally. They're going to be really calm
yeah,
about
like they always do.
Let me tell you something that's really funny, right? So we all were there when Jerry said, I'm all in the offseason. That was his big quote, and everyone in Dallas was like, all right, man, you got to show us. And he didn't do a thing. He brought back Ezekiel Elliott, of course. Massive move. But this is what so I've been listening to a lot of sports talk radio because I have no life. And I'm listening to them, and they said, this is what the Cowboys do. Every single reporter or whoever they bring on says, this is what the Cowboys do. They never pay their guys early, and they always wait till the last minute, right? But this time it's bit them so badly because there are 3 guys. And they all waited until every big Trevor Lawrence got paid $55 million a year. Dak has to get paid more than that. Justin Jefferson got paid $35 million. So CeeDee Lamb has to get something close to that. Because Justin Jefferson reset the market. I'm not mad the Vikings did it. Give him, if he wanted part ownership of the team and wanted to sleep with the owner's wife, I would say do it.
He's a once-in-a-generation talent.
CeeDee Lamb is not that far off from how good Justin Jefferson is for the Cowboys. And they need to pay him, but they haven't. And then what we're forgetting is Micah Parsons is one of the best players in the entire league, and he's not paid either. McCarthy is got 1 more year left. They didn't make any big moves. All those guys are going to lose. Dak Prescott, I think he should waive his no trade clause and get the hell out of there. If you're Micah Parsons, figure, he'll get paid, I'm assuming, in some way, shape, or form. But if you're not going to pay CeeDee Lamb either, what are you doing? Like, who are you going to get that's going to be better than CeeDee Lamb? Name a player.
And that's ultimately, and we're now kind of figuring out, and you kind of pointed it out. Jerry Jones took a lot of criticism in the offseason because the Cowboys were so silent. I mean, they didn't make any waves. They didn't really participate in free agency with any big splash. And now we kind of get to the beginning of training camp and we realize, the problems that he knew he was going to have. And look, it's, I'll say this as somebody who is, a fair-weathered Falcons fan and really a fair-weathered NFL fan. I love the NFL because it's on Sunday after college football's over. But, I'm a college football guy. I'm an SEC guy, but I love the NFL, like I said, because it's intriguing. It's got tons of storylines, and it's football, right? What's not to like about it? But But wow, I mean, Dallas went 12-5 last year, but they can't get over the hump in the playoffs, and that's the hardest thing to fix because you in order to put yourself in the position to win in the playoffs, you got to have a strong regular season. First of all, you have to make the playoffs. Second of all, you have to try to put yourself in a position to get a bye so that you can rest and get guys healthy. But what we've seen recently, James, is that week off, while folks might rest, you lose a little you lose a little momentum that you might have had at the end of the season. And too many of these teams that have had a week off at the beginning of the playoffs are ending up losing to wild card teams that that got in last time. And so I hate to say it for the Cowboys fans, but if you want to do better in the postseason, don't do as well in the regular season. Limp in, have absolutely no expectations on what's going to happen, and exceed expectations. But then your regular season's miserable, and it's tough. It's a tough position for
the
Cowboys
other part
fans.
the other problem they're facing right now is the conundrum of you either have to have a young, like if you're the Chiefs, right? They had a young enough quarterback where they could pay everybody else, and Mahomes is on a crazy cheap deal. You win a couple chips, then you have to spend money and make some major cuts. They got rid of Tyreek Hill. Don't forget about that.
Yeah.
They still want a chip because they have the GOAT. He's going to be the best quarterback who's ever lived, most likely. But if you look at the Rams, remember the Rams, they gave up everything, and they sold all their picks, and they went all in and spent all their money, but they got a championship out of it, and that's what matters. So the fear is if you do that, you won't win. And then you have no money left, and then you're bad for a little while. It happens. But that's the risk. Yeah. Jerry Jones is 81 years old. What are you doing not taking those risks?
Yeah,
you're not going to lose.
No,
you're never going to lose money. Your kids are going to be fine. What are you? You're 1,000. Make the decision.
No, you know what? You hit the nail on the head. It's not like he's and I'm 52 and I feel old. It's not like he's a 62-year-old owner.
No,
he's 81.
He's 100. He's dying. Yeah. He's literally dying in front of us, guys.
He's older than Joe Biden.
That's actually not great because Joe Biden can't talk right now. So it's definitely not just the age. No,
but it goes to show you it's not like he's got too many seasons left in the tank.
No. So why wouldn't you just give up? I have a feeling that his son is making some decisions. It's the only thing that makes sense to me because Jerry Jones is not going to be doing this forever. Now, you brought up something. You brought up that the Cowboys lost in the playoffs. They lost to a team with another holdout, and that's Jordan Love.
Yes.
Can we talk about the fact that he had, and this is not coming from the Packers hater, okay? I want to be clear that's not where this is coming from, although I do hate them. He's asking for money because of the Jaguars who screwed up and they gave Trevor Lawrence all that money. He's asking for something around that number after 10 good games. Now, I don't blame him. Go get your money now. Do it while you can. But if you're the Packers, you don't have a choice, right?
I don't think the Packers have a choice. And I also think that because of the premium on the position, because of what the market is paying in the position now, if Jordan Love has the season, this season that he had last season, you're going to pay him more a year from now than you pay him today.
You're getting the discount now, which doesn't sound like it, but you are.
And now, of course, the flip side to that is, if he has a bad sophomore season, you could get a discount, but you really can't take the risk with that position. If he was a tight end, you could take the risk. If he was a wide receiver, you could take a risk. If he was a running back,
goodbye.
If he was a linebacker, you could take the risk. You can't take the risk at the quarterback position. I know I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan. Look where we've been the last 3 or 4 seasons. I mean, last year we had Desmond Ridder and Tyler Heineke, okay?
And you have a crazy roster.
Yes. So in any event, you have to do it.
And
but here's right. And our time is flowing by. And I know you have obligations for another podcast on the network here in a minute, so we're going to wrap up. But here's the good news, James, about Friday's Finest moving forward is that we know politically a lot has happened over the last since we did Friday's Finest last week, and obviously I was out because I was out on vacation. So you and Doug handled it, but Next Thursday evening, the 1st of August, the NFL has the Hall of Fame game in Canton, Ohio. And there will not be another week between now and the weekend between the conference championship games and the Super Bowl that we don't have an NFL games to talk about on the field. And that, to me, is a very exciting time in the podcast.
Don't get me riled up, Chip, because I'll be honest, you know that I'm a diehard basketball fan. So I'm ready for the Olympic. I'm also an Olympic diehard. I'm ready for it. But between the NBA Finals and now has been the most dull. And we've had some decent baseball. Paul Skeens has been really great. The Mets just swept the Yankees. Let's go. But realistically, no football, no basketball. I'm dying out here. I'm in the desert looking for water. And we are almost back. Chip, there's going to be a point in the season, by the way, where the Atlanta Falcons play the Vikings.
Yes,
and I am willing to put any amount of money that you want on that game because we're going to take Kirk Cousins and we're going to smash him up against the wall. Well, I don't actually know where it is, so I'm hoping it's in U.S. Bank. I'm so excited for this season, Chip. I'm telling you. And
I can't wait.
I'm excited for college football because it's sort of up in the air right now. Michigan is not going to repeat. Doug's too hardcore and love for Georgia is getting him all caught up in all sorts of ways.
It is.
Okay? I'm going to make fun of him right now. His affinity for Georgia is out of hand because it comes up all the time, and then every time I'm like, they've won multiple championships. Just be happy with what you have. Who cares if they're not talking about him? We get Bill Belichick on McAfee every Monday to talk about and Saban.
And we get Nick Saban on College Game Day every Saturday.
I mean, the world is, you know what? Maybe the world is turning, guys. Maybe things are going to happen.
I'm glad you mentioned that because SEC Media Days were last week in Dallas, and it was exciting, but I don't think there were as many storylines that came out of SEC Media Days as maybe we were hoping. But I think the biggest storyline to come out of SEC Media Days is Nick Saban's new role in the media. And
him not getting in originally.
Exactly. And how much time and effort he's actually putting into his new job. Is it really a surprise that Nick Saban's putting a lot of time and effort into what he's doing?
It's the same with Belichick. They're insane people. They're genuinely we talk about that Kobe Bryant mentality, right? Everybody talks about that as like that's the athlete you want. And when I think about Belichick and I think about Saban, those dudes, they can't just turn it off. They have to find an outlet for it.
It's not their DNA.
No, I mean, they were just – did you know Bill Belichick turned down a San Francisco job? I was listening to this the other day. Kyle Shanahan called him and was like, hey, do you want to be our defensive coordinator? And he said that he politely turned him down. But they were like, are you surprised he turned it down? And they were like, not surprised he turned it down, but like, don't expect him to sit back. Like, you think he's going to help his kid in Washington? He's going to do the shows. They cannot – and you know what's great about them? They just love ball. You know when you meet somebody who loves the sport the way you love it? Yeah. You know, that's a feeling that they give you. So we're going to see that on College Game Day. And just a heads up, I know we're McAfee fans on the show. Let's all thank God he's back. Because
Amen, man. Amen.
What are we doing? Why are we who hates them that much? What are you doing? Just turn it off, bro.
That's right. If you don't like it, don't watch it. As always, James, our time has flown by. And look how much has happened in the last 7 days. There's no telling what Friday's Finest is going to look like a week from today, because we're going to have a body of work of the matchup between President Trump and Vice President Harris to talk about, and we get to talk about the Hall of Fame game, which as I said will
the first week of the Olympics,
and it's the first week of the Olympics, so
very exciting
to go over. Very exciting times. Folks, thanks for joining us. Thanks for tuning in to the Doug Collins podcast. Doug will be back next Friday. We'll have the whole gang back. The three of us will be back, and we'll catch you guys next Friday on the Doug Collins podcast. Thanks for listening in.